Good evening. I'm Bret Baier. NATO's chief addresses the tensions between his alliance and President Trump over the Iran conflict and defense spending. Can a far-left progressive Democrat win a special congressional election in one of the country's wealthiest and most educated districts? We'll take you there. And increasing worries about the potential of artificial intelligence causing big problems. But first, breaking tonight, President Trump says he is very optimistic that a peace deal with Iran is within reach. The president making that comment to NBC News a short time ago. Iran, meantime, insists the Strait of Hormuz is open tonight. This comes amid a fragile ceasefire that has been complicated by Israeli attacks on Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. Israel and Lebanon are now expected to talk next week at the State Department in Washington, D.C. In-person talks between the U.S. and Iran are scheduled to begin Saturday in Islamabad, Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance leads the U.S. team. Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich starts us off tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Jackie.
Good evening, Bret. About 40 minutes ago, President Trump reacting to reports that Iran is charging tolls for tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, saying they better not be, and if they are, they better stop now. The development's coming as the early stages of the ceasefire appear to be holding. An Indian-flagged LNG carrier passing through the Strait of Hormuz Thursday, among the first signs Iran is, so far, holding up its end of the ceasefire bargain.
Anybody who communicates with the Iranian authority has got permission from yesterday.
Coordination necessary because of mines in the strait, Iran's deputy foreign minister confirmed.
Those technical restrictions are very much connected to the wartime condition, and it takes time to be removed. So safe passage is secure. We have maps, we have everything that, we have to be careful that, the safe passage of tankers and vessels and well-being of crews are actually met during this passage.
Today, President Trump revealing he personally played a part in facilitating Iran's demand that the ceasefire also apply to Israel's strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, telling NBC, "I spoke with Bibi and he's going to low-key it. I think we just have to be sort of a little more low-key." But while the fragile ceasefire holds, Trump also made clear in a post the pause could be lifted at any moment, saying in part, all U.S. ships, aircraft, and military personnel with additional ammunition, weaponry, and anything else that is appropriate and necessary will remain in place in and around Iran until such time as the real agreement reached is fully complied with. If for any reason it is not, which is highly unlikely, then the shooting starts, bigger and better and stronger than anyone has ever seen before.
A 2-week ceasefire is not sufficient.
House Democrats, meantime, are dead set on stopping any additional military action, saying they only need 2 more Republican signatures to stop the president with the War Powers Act.
We need a permanent end to Donald Trump's costly and reckless war of choice. And House Democrats are committed to bringing about that outcome.
Minority Leader Jeffries says Democrats will force a vote when Congress returns. So still not many details into the 15-point U.S. plan or the new 10-point Iranian proposal being discussed in Islamabad this weekend. There's also not much daylight into the proposed joint tolling venture with Iran that the president said he might entertain. But tonight the UK is leveling its opposition to the idea of any tolling in the strait, saying Iran cannot be allowed to introduce them. Bret.
And Jackie, First Lady Melania Trump made this unexpected public address today, denying close ties to Jeffrey Epstein and calling on Congress to hold a hearing for survivors. Do you know what spurred that?
Not yet, Bret. The Epstein story has been largely out of the news, and it's not clear yet what motivated the First Lady to address what she called lies and false smears about her.
To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998.
First Lady also said she had no knowledge of Epstein's abuse to his victims. White House officials were unable to provide any context, and they did not answer when we asked if President Trump was aware the statement would be coming. The First Lady's office said they're going to let her words stand on their own. Bret.
Okay. Jackie Heinrich live in the North Lawn. Jackie, thank you. Wall Street had another good day on optimism over the possible end of the Iran conflict. The Dow gaining 276 today. The S&P 500 finished ahead 42. The Nasdaq jumped 187. As we told you earlier, Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is now open, and Israel will begin discussions with Lebanon next week in Washington over its bombing campaign against Hezbollah terrorists. Senior correspondent Mike Tobin is live in Tel Aviv tonight.
Following 2 days of reinvigorated airstrikes into Lebanon, that country's president said the only solution is a ceasefire, followed by talks with Israel. Israel's prime minister announced talks are planned
to achieve two goals. First, the disarmament of Hezbollah. Second, an historic and sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon.
Israel claims to have killed 200 Hezbollah terrorists and struck crossings used to transfer weapons and missile launchers, and claims it assassinated a personal secretary to Hezbollah's new leader, Naim Qassem. But the intensified Israeli air campaign threatens the fragile ceasefire with Iran 2 days old. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, posting such actions signal deception and noncompliance, rendering negotiations meaningless. 40 days since Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in joint U.S.-Israeli strikes, pro-regime demonstrators take to the streets.
America is the great Satan. Our martyred leader always said we cannot negotiate with America.
Today, the first oil tanker crossed the Strait of Hormuz since the ceasefire. A total of 9 vessels passed through the waterway, critical to negotiations. U.S. naval ships and 50,000 U.S. warfighters sit on pause. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper congratulated them for 13,000 strikes that devastated weapons stores and the military-industrial base Iran spent 40 years building.
At the beginning of this campaign, I sent a letter to the force expressing my expectations, and our extraordinary warfighters exceeded each and every one of them.
The talks with Israel and Lebanon will be held next week in the U.S. at State Department headquarters. The negotiators will be the ambassadors for both nations. Bret, back to you.
Mike Tobin live in Tel Aviv. Mike, thank you. European diplomats tell Reuters NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is briefing allies. The President Trump wants concrete commitments on security for the Strait of Hormuz within the next few days. This comes amid serious tensions between the alliance and its most important member. Senior foreign policy correspondent Jillian Turner has that part of the story tonight from the State Department.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is still in Washington after high-stakes meetings with the President and Secretary of State.
This alliance is not whistling past the graveyard, as you would say in the United States.
He got candid about the rift in the transatlantic alliance over support for the U.S. military during Operation Epic Fury, or lack thereof.
When it came time to provide the logistical and other support the United States needed in Iran, some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were also a bit surprised.
European diplomats tout Rutte as a so-called Trump whisperer, but he's not saying whether the president plans to actually withdraw from the alliance. Critics are calling the president's threats to do so illegal, insisting the move would require an act of Congress.
This is the most successful military and diplomatic alliance in the history of the world. And the president in real time is trying to dismantle it.
NATO Article 5 calls an armed attack against one member an attack against all and triggers a collective defense. It has been invoked just once in history on behalf of the United States after the 9/11 attacks. But that was 25 years ago.
I'm very disappointed in NATO, very. I think it's a mark on NATO that will never disappear in my mind.
Thousands of NATO soldiers later gave their lives fighting alongside America in Afghanistan. Well, President Trump and his cabinet have been considering potential options to seek retaliation against some NATO members, countries they say have been unhelpful during Operation Epic Fury. Tonight, interestingly, Reuters has an exclusive. They're reporting the president might actually order the Pentagon to pull troops from some NATO bases, Bret.
We'll follow that. Jillian Turner, live at the State Department. Jillian, thank you. ICE is marking the one-year anniversary of its program designed to give voice to victims of immigration-related crime. Some of those victims' family members poured their hearts out today. Congressional correspondent Bill Maluzhin shows us tonight, and his story does contain some graphic video.
Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. There are repercussions, and my family lives it every day.
Angel families gathering in Washington today to honor their loved ones killed and maimed at the hands of illegal immigrants.
A tragedy like mine and the other families that are here, excuse me, could have been prevented.
Birthdays, holidays, Mother's Days have never been the same. I buried my son a week before Mother's Day.
It was all part of an ICE news conference highlighting the one-year anniversary of the relaunch of its Victims of Immigrant Crime Engagement Office, which was shuttered under President Biden.
When ICE officers and special agents are demonized, called Nazis, hated, there's violence against them. We do it for these individuals.
And it comes as migrant crime has been all over the headlines. In Fort Myers, Florida, police arrested this Haitian illegal alien after they say he was caught on camera brutally bludgeoning a gas station clerk to death with a hammer. In Fairfax County, Virginia, illegal aliens have been arrested for 3 out of 4 of the county's murders so far this year, after Democratic Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger ended all state cooperation with ICE. DHS says 3 of those suspects entered the U.S. during the Biden administration.
What's your message to Governor Spanberger and to Fairfax County, a sanctuary jurisdiction?
For us, it's so frustrating because we see innocent people getting murdered all the time, and it's totally preventable. And if, elected officials like the governor want to give me a call and work with us, that's what we want.
And Bret, ICE Director Lyons went on to tell us that ICE has now arrested more than 453,000 criminal aliens. Those are aliens who have been charged with or convicted of a crime since President Trump began his second term in office. We'll send it back to you.
A lot of people. Bill, thank you.
Yep.
Up next, why the eyes of the nation will be on a special congressional election next week in New Jersey. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 5 in New York, as attorneys for Sean Diddy Combs try to persuade federal judges that the hip-hop mogul was treated unfairly at the trial that sent him to prison on prostitution-related charges. They say his conviction should be reversed, or he should at least be freed and resentenced to reduced time. Judges did not make a decision today. Fox 11 in Los Angeles says a sheriff's deputy in Porterville is reportedly fatally shot. A suspect with a high-powered rifle is said to be barricaded in or near a school. The sheriff says all the children are safe. A Facebook post from the sheriff says deputies were serving an eviction notice when the shooting started. Fox 35 in Orlando as a school bus driver is charged with nearly 30 counts of child neglect as well as reckless driving after her vehicle was clipped by a train last week. Yvonne Hampton drove onto the railroad tracks and then was blocked by a car in front of her as the train advanced. She pulled most of the bus out of the way, but not all of it. No one, fortunately, was injured. And this is a live look at Seattle from Fox 13. One of the big stories there tonight, an Amazon Flex driver is arrested after neighbors reported seeing hundreds of boxes accumulating on her property. Deputies found a massive stash of undelivered orders valued at $12,000. The suspect admitted to accepting delivery routes and pay despite having no intention of delivering those items. Tonight, the Justice Department is investigating whether the National Football League is using anti-competitive tactics against fans. The probe comes as surging streaming prices have left many fans unable to see the games. The head of the Federal Communications Commission says his panel is looking into whether sports leagues should continue to benefit from a special antitrust exemption. The NFL says its media distribution model is the most fan and broadcaster friendly in the sports and entertainment industry. We are a week away from a big special election in New Jersey. At issue is whether a hard-left Democratic candidate can win the congressional seat vacated by now Governor Mikey Sherrill. National correspondent Brian Yennis takes a look tonight from Belleville, New Jersey. Belleville, New Jersey.
I say abolish ICE now! Activist Ana Lilia Mejia is favored to win New Jersey's 11th congressional district special election next Thursday and become one of the most progressive members of Congress. Mejia supports Medicare for all, including what she calls essential health care for transgender people, free college tuition, a $25 federal minimum wage, accused Israel of genocide, and wants to abolish ICE.
We don't need armed thugs running around our streets shooting American people just for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Mejia is endorsed by the so-called Progressive Squad and Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders. She's even said Jesus was likely a Democratic Socialist, but Mejia insists she's not.
Sure, I mean, Ms. Mejia doesn't want to say if she's a socialist or not, but I think the facts will show
I
that.
said I'm not.
Councilman Joe Hathaway is running against Mejia, selling himself as a common-sense new generation Republican, not afraid to stand up to President Trump.
I think tariffs need to be used as a scalpel, not as a negotiating tool and as a hammer like we've been seeing.
Hathaway says a Mejia win in one of the nation's wealthiest and most educated districts would send a dangerous signal.
If we have Democrat, socialist, radical candidates like this winning in a district like NJ11, there's no reason they can't continue to move across, and the Democratic Party will slide further and further into a socialist party. I think that's bad for our state. I think it's very bad for our country.
Early voting is underway. The winner of this special election serves out the remaining 8 months of now Governor Mikey Sherrill's congressional term. Now, ultimately, both candidates plan to run again in June primaries ahead of the November general election. Bret?
Brian Yenes, live in New Jersey. Brian, thanks. We have some interesting information tonight on how your fellow Americans feel about wasteful government spending. It comes during the Trump administration's new anti-fraud crackdown. Here's White House correspondent Aisha Hasni.
Tonight, California's Democrat Attorney General announcing a major hospice fraud scheme. Authorities arresting 5 out of 21 suspects as they say 14 fake hospice companies fraudulently billed California $267 million using stolen identities.
Trump is late to the party. California DOJ has been going after healthcare fraud since 1979.
It comes amid a war of words between Governor Gavin Newsom's administration and the Trump administration over accusations that state officials are failing to fight fraud in the Golden State. Last week, the feds busted 8 fraudulent hospice providers in L.A. billing Medicare for patients that didn't exist.
If you just look at the money that we pay as a federal government for insurance, we think there's about $100 billion of fraud.
The White House is taking an aggressive position to root out fraud nationwide. New Fox News polling shows 53% of Americans say a great deal of government spending is wasteful, while 22% say almost all is. This week, Vice President J.D. Vance's new anti-fraud task force said it uncovered nearly $6.3 billion in potentially fraudulent government contracts. The task force now sending out letters to about 400 companies demanding proof of their legitimacy within 30 days or they lose their contracts.
And Bret, a spokesperson for the VP, telling Fox that if fraudsters are robbing hardworking Americans of their tax dollars and services, we will find them. Bret?
Aisha, thank you. Up next, we talk with Victor Davis Hanson about the situation in the Middle East and U.S. tensions with NATO, and then a live report from Johnson Space Center as the Artemis II mission prepares for a return to Earth.
Safe passage is secured. Strait of Hormuz is open.
Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, we're all subject to attacks. In the first day of this, the strait was not open.
They have said that they're going to start letting many more ships through. We'll watch as the day progresses.
Well, is the Strait of Hormuz open as Iran contends, or isn't it? Joining us tonight, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow Historian Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, thanks for being here. First of all, 30,000 feet.
Thank you.
How do you see this right now? What has happened with the ceasefire and what we're seeing out of Iran and the back and forth with the U.S.?
Well, they have a history they can't be trusted, that's for sure. But all the options are on our side if we choose to operate them. We've done about $500 billion in damage over a 47-year investment that they've lost. They've got a restive population. They're going to have to explain to the population when this is over that we're going to spend billions of dollars to rearm at your expense, and you're not going to have affordable food and gas. And we're also going to subsidize Arab terrorists like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthi. That's going to be very difficult to do. And then if we want to go, we can go. If Donald Trump thinks he has domestic pressures, he can go back. he can go. The second option, Bret, is he can join the European Armada, such as it is. He can provide them air cover and force open the Strait of Hormuz. And the third, of course, is he can say the negotiations are stalled and here's another deadline, and this time just keep it. And he could take out Karg Island. I think the Chinese would be very angry about that. Or he could take out the dual use. I will say, Bret, there's been a little confusion about this infrastructure, not just World War II or Korea, but Vietnam, and as well, the first Gulf War, we hit power plants, we hit communications, we hit transportation, we hit water plants. We did it in Serbia. We destroyed every bridge on the Danube River. We knocked out the power grid of Belgrade, 1.5 million people. Even the misadventure, 7 months in Libya, they said that they weren't going to do that, but they hit civilian ships, port facilities, television stations. So that was kind of a red herring. That's a legitimate target according to our past policies. We could always do that. You know, the other thing about NATO, I think people have kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the vice president is leading this team, obviously with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in Pakistan, in Islamabad, for these talks. Now, you know, the strait and being open is a key point. The other key point is the highly enriched uranium and who gets it, how it happens, and, you know, how does it get out of there?
Yes. Yeah, well, it hasn't been determined exactly where it is and which of the two conflicting theories are correct, that they have moved it or they have the ability to move it, or it's deeply embedded and scattered under a mountain. So that has to be adjudicated. And we can't even define what the Strait of Hormuz being open or closed means. There has to be a certain number of tankers or a percentage that are allowed in. But those are, if you have overwhelming military power, you can force those concessions. The problem the United States has right now is not military. They can do what they need. It's Donald Trump's political problems, and that is, of course, public opinion on the war in general and his popularity and the people in Congress that need to be reelected in the Republican Party in the midterms, of course, and the economy as well. Those are the pressures that really matter. But militarily, they can do almost anything they want, and they can achieve both of those objectives if they want to. It's just a matter of how much of a political price they're willing to risk.
Right. The Trump Truth Social just earlier, before the show, said there are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now, President Donald J. Trump. You know, he communicates via Truth Social a lot of times. He's also telling NATO they need to come up with a concrete plan to help open the strait.
Yeah, I think when General Mattis was CENTCOM commander under the Obama administration, they threatened to do things like that, and he brought a multilateral armada through, and we could, I don't think there's any problem if the Europeans would step up. We could provide air cover or join it. But if they don't want to do it and the Iranians double down, then we have a list of targets that we can just check off each hour until they want to open it. And if they don't want to open it, they'll take a level of damage that will take a decade to repair. So the problem with the NATO is I think there's a lot of miscommunications. They feel that the United States, this was a singular or unilateral operation. Of course it was, but they do that all the time. We supported France and Chad on a kind of a crazy mission, a post-colonial mission for almost 30 years. And they got us into Libya, and that was a coalition of the willing. I think you could argue the Strait of Hormuz is far more critical to the national security of Europe than the Arab Spring in Libya. We bombed for 7 months for no avail. Kosovo was not in NATO, and they made the argument that the coalition of NATO powers should stop, and I think it was a correct one, stop Milosevic's genocide, but they weren't able to do it. So we stepped in and did 80% of the missions. My only point is that they do this all the time where they have a particular mission and they don't get it approved by the entire membership, and sometimes they act unilaterally or in triplets or 4 or 5. And so if they're not going to be reciprocal, I think NATO it'll always exist, but it'll be a name only, and Donald Trump and his administration or subsequent ones will pick and choose which NATO members they can count on, and they'll do what the NATO members have done in the past. They'll say who wants to go to Libya or who wants to go to Serbia, and some don't. I don't think that if Spain has a problem with North Africa or something, I don't think we're going to be there very ready to help Spain, of course.
Well, we'll see how this all comes together. Victor Davis Hanson, always interesting getting your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, the Artemis II crew is getting ready for their final act. We'll go live to Johnson Space Center in Texas. And then, are you worried about artificial intelligence? You're not alone. We have some information about a new program that may be causing some of those fears.
Who are the other people that will eventually have this capability, or other potentially dangerous capabilities who won't be cautious, let alone, other companies and other nation states?
Astronauts on the Artemis II spacecraft are preparing for tomorrow's return to Earth. The mission has been a resounding success so far, but the final leg could be the trickiest. Senior correspondent Jonathan Seri is at the Johnson Space Center in Texas again tonight. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening to you, Bret. On the way back from the far side of the moon, Artemis II is now preparing for the grand finale. The Navy has dispatched the USS John P. Murtha to a splashdown site off the coast of San Diego to recover the astronauts when their Orion space capsule returns late Friday.
We have to get back. There's so much data that you've seen already, but all the good stuff is coming back with us. There's so many more pictures, so many more stories. and riding a fireball through the atmosphere is profound as well.
At nearly 24,000 miles per hour, the capsule must strike Earth's atmosphere at just the right angle to slow to a parachute-assisted splashdown at less than 20 miles per hour.
This is the Orion mission simulator. It looks like the cockpit of the Artemis II spacecraft. Up here, you can even see the moon out the window. It has a direct link to mission control here in Houston. It's not only used for training astronauts, but for testing procedures to uplink to the actual crew in space.
As the 4 astronauts return to Earth's gravitational bonds, they say the mission has also strengthened the ties among the crew.
The 4 of us are now forged in a friendship that is very unique, and we will cherish this bond that we share for the rest of our lives.
This sense of teamwork is something that you don't usually get, as an adult. I mean, we are close, like brothers and sisters.
And forecasters say the weather at the primary splashdown site looks really good for tomorrow. They are looking at a splashdown around 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time. Bret?
We'll carry it live here on Fox. Jonathan, thanks. Well, for those of you who think artificial intelligence is dangerous or could be, this next story may not make you feel any better. Tech firm Anthropic has begun a tightly controlled rollout of a model considered dangerous enough to risk total catastrophe. Here's senior national correspondent Rich Edson.
It's very powerful, generally, in a lot of ways.
Anthropic says its new Claude Mythos preview model is better than most skilled humans at exploiting security flaws in critical software, discovering, quote, thousands of high-severity vulnerabilities, including some in every major operating system and web browser. Given the rate of AI progress, it will not be long before such capabilities proliferate, potentially beyond actors who are committed to deploying them safely. Currently, Anthropic has no plans to release Mythos to the public.
We're starting out by deploying it with a number of companies and organizations and developers that maintain some of the most important code in the world, so we can help to defend it first.
Anthropic says only about 40 organizations have access to Mythos, including Apple, Google, and JP Morgan Chase, to find and fix weaknesses in their foundational systems.
Cyber is huge, and it's getting worse every single year.
Axios reports Anthropic competitor OpenAI is finalizing an advanced security model it plans to release to a small set of organizations. One analyst says governments need to contain these developments before AI itself becomes too powerful.
I'm worried that we just don't know how to control those systems. We'll lose control of them, and that could very likely result in human extinction. We're just not ready.
The Trump administration is pushing Congress to pass a law governing aspects of AI that would supersede a patchwork of state regulations. Anthropic says it has discussed Mythos' offensive and defensive cyber capabilities with U.S. government officials. Separately this week, a federal appeals court denied Anthropic's request to temporarily block the Pentagon from blacklisting the company after a dispute over whether the military could use its AI without certain restrictions. Florida's Attorney General has just announced an investigation into OpenAI and ChatGPT over allegations the program helped a gunman attack Florida State's campus last year. Bret?
All right, Rich, thank you. Up next, the panel on the tenuous ceasefire in the Middle East. First, beyond our borders tonight, Russian President Vladimir Putin declares a 32-hour ceasefire in Ukraine over the Orthodox Easter weekend. Putin's decree orders Russian forces to observe a ceasefire starting on Saturday afternoon, lasting until the end of Sunday. Putin's move follows Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's proposal earlier this week to observe a pause in attacks on each other's energy infrastructure over the Orthodox Easter. And this is a live look at Rome. One of the big stories there tonight, Pope Leo welcomes the Harlem Globetrotters to St. Peter's Square. The Pope was seen, check this out, attempting one of the team's classic tricks, spinning that red, white, and blue basketball on a finger with the help of the players. He's got some moves, just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight.
Well, we have an agreement with the Iranians that they're going to open the Straits of Hormuz and that we'll have a ceasefire.
Let's have a vote to end this war because the ceasefire is a joke.
Iran's in a better place with respect to the Strait than they were before this war started.
They've got to unconditionally open the Strait of Hormuz, and they've got to commit to ending the sowing of violence.
We still have leverage to it, and the leverage is simply this. The deadline is 2 weeks. We hold to the deadline.
Straightening out the strait. Is it open? Is it not? What's going on with this deal? Just a few minutes ago during this show, the president issued a Truth Social saying Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have. President Donald J. Trump. Here's the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran.
The Strait of Hormuz is open. Of course, there are technical restrictions because of the war zone. This is why that all the ships that they would like to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they have to communicate with our army and our military contact points there because of the limitations in this strait. And this strait is a very narrow strait.
Well, with that, let's bring in our panel. Fox News contributor Ben Domenech, host of the Big Ben podcast, Mary Catherine Ham, Fox News contributor, and Democratic campaign consultant Kevin Walling. Okay, Ben, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think the president is clearly sending a message that he wants and expects the Iranians to live up to their side of what was within this ceasefire agreement from the get-go, which is the kind of thing that the markets responded to. The strait being open is of the utmost importance to him, and he views that as a precedent for any kind of future negotiations that could lead to a ceasing of hostilities in the long term. I just think that there's no reason at this point, Bret, to put any faith in the Iranians. I understand that the president feels like he's talking to people who are treating this more objectively with more clarity than the people he was talking to before. But there's just no reason that we should trust them to live up to their obligations after so many years of experiencing the opposite.
Meantime, Mary Catherine, the NATO Secretary General is saying the European countries have heard President Trump. Take a listen.
Some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were also a bit surprised. To maintain the element of surprise for the initial strikes, President Trump opted not to inform allies ahead of time. Nearly without exception, allies are doing everything the United States is asking.
So, is there hope maybe that they're going to come around?
I think Rutte gets Trump, and his message to him is more likely to land than, say, a Macron. I understand Trump's frustrations, and I share some of them, particularly when it comes to opening airspace and air bases and that kind of thing. However, when you are doing something and you need immediate help, I think his strong-arming has helped to make those countries invest in their own military over the long term. But when you need immediate help, sometimes you got to play the good cop. That is part of statecraft, and I think a little bit more of that along the way would be helpful to getting them along. As far as trusting these guys in a negotiation, as Ben was noting, we have this upcoming with several unreliable partners in the room, Pakistan and Iran. But I'm heartened by the fact that Trump in the past has already, in negotiations with Iran, when they try to get squirrely, when they try to renege as they always do, that he has been willing to restart, to strike, and hopefully he will be again, because you have to hold that line.
The vice president leading that team, Kevin, in Islamabad, and he talked about how Israel now is going to talk with Lebanon about what's happening in Hezbollah. Here he is.
The Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful. That's not because that is part of the ceasefire.
So there'll be talks in D.C. at the State Department between Israel and Lebanon, and there'll be talks in Islamabad with the Vice President, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and the Iranians.
Yeah, Bret, I mean, trust is everything, and there is quite a fundamental lack of it. Let's not forget that Lebanon and Israel have been in a de facto state of war going back to 1948. And of course, obviously, the Israelis are super focused on taking on Hezbollah, as they have even before this war started 6 weeks ago. It's been a key focus of theirs, an important focus of theirs, because of just the nature of the rockets that still come across Israel's northern border. But of course, negotiations are important. This is a first step. The lead for that is going to be the Israeli ambassador to the United States, our ambassador to Lebanon, and we'll see who Beirut sends next week to engage in those conversations. But certainly a good step forward to see some kind of positive outcome with that northern border situation with Israel.
Yeah, just tonight there were sirens in Tel Aviv about possibly a Hezbollah rocket being fired. We're following that. Meantime, Ben, the First Lady comes out and delivers this message about Epstein and lies linking her to disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein. She has this pretty long statement in which she also calls for public hearings. Take a listen.
I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony.
President Trump told NBC he didn't know that the First Lady was going to do this before she did. What about this message in the middle of all of this?
Well, it was certainly surprising. I mean, I was talking to people who were covering the White House, including, several White House correspondents about this, about how much it came out of left field. The First Lady clearly is very passionate about it and feels personally offended and insulted by what she views as fake news reports that have gone and circled around this, including potentially, ones that she anticipated. But moving at this particular time to put this subject back into center stage, I'm not sure that the rest of the White House press team was expecting that or ready for it. We'll see how this plays out going forward. I will say that for the women who she's talking about testifying in front of Congress, that under oath part plays both ways. And there's some people who have had, I think, situations where they've been able to claim a lot of things without being under oath. We'll see how many people stand up and are willing to do that.
Mary Catherine, AP has a headline, Pam Bondi won't appear for House deposition next week in the Epstein investigation. Just interesting timing on all of this for the First Lady's statement.
Yeah, I'm sure she seems passionate about it. I'm sure that the president and many of his staff are not excited to have this thrown back out there again. Many of the folks I think that she's referring to were in a Super Bowl ad. They have been public, and I think that yes, in a different area under oath, there might be different details that we would find out.
Last word, Kevin.
It was certainly a surprising statement. We don't often hear from the First Lady, but there was passion in her voice, especially for the victims. And I still think you see bipartisan support to have now the former Attorney General before the Oversight Committee, and we'll see how that continues to play out.
Okay, panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Bret.
Finally, tonight, a special day.
I just want to say, man, go blue, baby! Yeah!
Fans gathered outside the Chrysler Center in Ann Arbor Tuesday to welcome home the Michigan Wolverines after they were crowned the 2026 NCAA basketball tournament champions. Wolverines greeted and thanked supporters with Coach Dusty May telling fans the trophy truly belongs to them. Michigan beat Connecticut 69-63 Monday night. Championship parade and rally for the Wolverines scheduled for Saturday. Pretty cool. Tomorrow's special report, former Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia hits the campaign trail to urge people in the Commonwealth to vote no on a redistricting referendum. Remember, if you can't catch us live, set your DVR, 6 p.m. in the East, 3 p.m. on the West Coast. You can follow me on TikTok, X, and Instagram at Bret Baier for exclusive behind-the-scenes content. Did manage to go down to the Masters yesterday, as you saw on the show. It is fantastic, and it looks like it's shaping up to be a great weekend there. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and still unafraid. The Ingram Angle starts in 8 seconds.